Hi, welcome back to Disposable Design. Today, Thomas and I want to discuss a framework for IDs. Basically, it's an organizational structure to help you grow your online department. We'll talk about potential pitfalls and roadblocks you may experience along the way. Check it out.
Oh yeah, do you have anything from last show that you want to continue arguing about
We
until the
don't
end of
really
time?
argue though. I
No.
mean, we've got to get into some stuff that we'll actually fight about.
Right. Well, and the only thing from the last show that I've continued to ponder really is this idea of why do we think that academic IDs need to have advanced degrees?
Yeah, going back to that, and I thought about that for a long time actually, because the more I think about it, and you brought up a good point, just to be able to match wills with these professors, and
Yeah.
it does give you an air of authority, sort of, if you want to call it that. So I mean that it's not necessarily a bad idea. And then when they go over to corporate or step into a director of innovation job or something like that, it's nothing but beneficial. So after pondering for a while, I no longer disagree, I guess. I
Well,
think
good,
it's
because I've changed my mind too. So now we can argue with each other on the other side of it. No, not really. But so what I was thinking of mostly was this perspective of, like you were saying, like not quite a position of authority, but being able to speak to the faculty, knowing the position that their students are potentially going through at the grad student level, which is a completely different experience than if you've only got a bachelor's degree or an associate's or just 20 years of experience in that industry. Um, but then I was thinking about when I look at the job postings for IDs out in the corporate world, so to speak, and I see these things that say like they want 10 years of ID experience and intricate knowledge of pipeline systems.
yeah.
And thinking from a collegiate ID where I've worked with almost every college on campus. I've built classes for the ag crew. I've built classes for advanced science. I've worked at the body farm and helped them set things up out there. Like nobody ever asked me, "Do you have 7 years of pipeline experience?"
Yeah.
When it, right, like I was my expert on what I did. They didn't consider me an expert, and then they were bringing in the SME part of it. Me knowing the intricacies of anything that they were doing never even occurred to them. So the I guess that's kind of where we get some of it from. We're like, oh yeah, no, we need to be as informed in this process, but it's the same flaw in thinking.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So so I think the solution, right? Because we got to solve all these problems that we sit here and bemoan, um, is altering the job postings a little bit to say maybe a degree or appropriate experience to equal it, and then let us determine on the hiring committees whose job experience and what, right? If somebody worked for 8 years on a tight research team that was producing publications, that was working with doctors in their fields, that to me is the same as having an advanced graduate degree, because it shows that level of rigor of research, attention to detail, managing a lab where if you screw up something, like all of your cultures die and you have to start 6 months over, right? That level of seriousness that you get from people.
Yeah, my
And I
husband brought
was
up this amazing analogy with his own job. He's like, if somebody drops dead tomorrow, do you want the guy with 35 years experience out there trying to figure out who killed you, or do you want the guy who just came off the street with a bachelor's degree? I mean, there's something to be said for all the experience, and it
yeah.
bothers me that they still try to discount that for, I hate to say for a piece of paper, because it's more than a piece of paper, but that experience, it has a lot of value.
Yeah. And it's nuanced too, right? Because you've got the opposite thing where you had fire inspectors that were sentencing people essentially to life in prison based on nonsense homeopathic fire inspection tactics that were passed on down from people. So that person's 35 years of experience is nothing compared to the guy with the graduate degree in fire science or whatever it's called. I'm sure I'm
You've been
pissing off a
watching
bunch of
Netflix
people.
documentaries again, haven't you?
No, actually, a family friend of ours growing up was one of the fire inspectors for Houston, who had he was the guy that trained and maintained the fire dog. And so he was always talking to us about how the dog was better than some of the inspectors that he went to conferences and heard from and stuff. So, and that dog was never able to get to 35 years of experience, sadly, due to early retirement forced upon him. Um,
So
but
maybe it's a balance then. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, to me, at this stage of the game, it's common sense, and
right.
you can't teach that. You can't teach common sense.
And yeah, every parent will tell you the struggles of trying to pass common sense on down to the next generation. Um, yeah, I mean, to some extent, yeah, you can't teach common sense. You can help formulate a norm so that people that you help quote unquote raise will look back and say, these are the behaviors I'm supposed to emulate. Um, uh, but yeah, you never know.
What a perfect segue into a framework for ID.
Oh yeah, like we have a point for this discussion, don't we? Oh my gosh. Actually, let me grab more coffee. I'll be right back.
It's not fair. I didn't get my coffee yet.
Last one slipped in there. Anyway, framework for ID. So I came up with this idea, so I think it's only fair that you tell us what you think it means.
Well, looking over it, it looks like a framework from a managerial point of view. So
And I
if
came
you're
up,
building a team of IDs, that's kind of what it looked like to me.
yeah, and that's kind of what. So I was at a conference and I heard these people talking about their ID structure, and their ID structure was their university system had 4 colleges that were remote, and they had one ID. No, they had two IDs in one central location. So 3 of those colleges were remote from those 2 IDs, and they would just show up with boxes and boxes of stuff, and say, here's my syllabus, here's my source content,
Oh,
here build a class. And these people were talking. These 2 IDs that were presenting were talking about their experiences as IDs and how I don't think they knew what they were. That not that they weren't IDs, but that they were in this nightmare scenario where they're repairing the raft that they're on as it's being fed into the volcano. Highly productive.
yeah.
So that's where I got the idea of thinking about, well, their faculty have access to some form of ID, but what is it? Like, what is a structure, and how would they grow from there? And how do you have a conversation with those 2 IDs about what you're doing at your university? And then, God forbid, you have to talk to an administrator about the difference between the two. So that's where this framework for ID idea came from. That there's a level 0, which is where everybody starts for the most part. And then, like everything I say, because I'm a master equivocator, there's exceptions. So there's always faculty that are further up this framework for ID chain than their structures allow for support. And they don't care because they've developed their own content, they've developed their own methods, they've got their content even off LMS on their own areas that they control, whether that's school supported or not. We'll leave that for another podcast. But most of their colleagues are at this level 0 where the faculty have an LMS. In anything less than that, you're not doing ID and online ed. If you don't have an LMS, you're just relying on whatever random publisher sides of things, or email,
Or
I
IT.
don't, or IT, and systems that were designed for team communication and collaboration that are being used for distribution of class materials and live meetings and stuff, which it can look good and it can be managed well, but it's extremely
So much extra work.
yeah on
It's a
everyone's
heavy
part.
lift. Yeah.
Yeah, if they're not fed in programmatically, to if the student loads aren't fed in, and then the faculty have things set up in folders for them, the rest of it, it's still a nightmare. And then also at level 0, so you've got an LMS, you've got no ID services available essentially, and in that school with the 4 colleges and the 2 IDs, I'm essentially listing them as no ID services available, because if a department decided, hey, we want to put a program online, and they contact those people, there's no ability to fast track anything. So you have a lot of publisher content at level 0, and you have what we have moved away from, called the filing cabinet design, which is there's no modular aspect to it in the sense of guiding the students through it. It's designed like a filing cabinet where here's all my exams, here's all my documents that go with the assignments, and then I'm going to put all of my videos here in one separate folder, and it just leads to a non-ideal experience for the students. And then the danger.
Pause there, because you just said something that I don't think a lot of people really consider in this field, and that's the experience of the student.
Really? They don't consider that?
Stop it. But I'm serious, and I feel like the whole field as a entity really needs to shift their way of thinking, because they're talking at students, but they're not truly servicing their students, and I definitely see that in your ID framework. So as we move up I want to come back to that, because I think that moving up the framework does produce a better product for your students.
Yeah, and even structuring it based around the idea that you can't beat yourself down to meet the needs of the lowest common denominators in your class, right? The students that are, either gaming the system or there to get a C or things like that. You can't beat yourself up down to the point of oblivion trying to alter all of your content to be perfect for everybody.
Well, and there are better ways to handle those students too, even in an online environment. I mean, there's lots of things you can do.
Perfectly said. Yeah, don't adjust the content when you can use support mechanisms or support staff or academic success areas,
retention center, stuff like that.
A megaphone. And then the danger at level 0 is that your administration will sign a contract with a predatory online education company, and I won't name any of them because they're predatory and they will come after me. Yeah. But you know who you are. And then they set up these contracts with the schools where they gain immediate access to a bunch of online students per se, but the courses are developed by outside bodies. They're managed by outside bodies. Upwards of 60 to 75% of the income that's brought in, potential income, isn't anymore, because they only get to keep 25% of it. And then it's this top-heavy relationship where you can't say no anymore, because now you lose that 25% and they take all the content with them. One of the schools I saw developed this contract built into it and said, over time, we will be building our own content and canceling your classes to replace them with ours over like 8-year period. And that was the best one of those academic education company contracts that I've seen from a Texas institution. I saw that. I was like, okay, that's beautiful. Yeah.
That the company actually signed up for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a bunch of money for them, right? They had already got the classes developed. It's not like they redeveloped any of that content for that school. So
yeah,
I don't remember what company it was anyway. Yeah, it was unusual. And it was a company that I've seen not do that with other institutions. And it could have just been that school was big enough and lucrative enough that even that tiered down approach was still enough money for them to want to do it. Yeah, so that's level 0. So you've been in the classroom at level 0.
Yes, I have.
What's that like?
I was that teacher that I hate as an ID. I was that teacher who was doing things outside the system. I was the teacher who had things hosted and things outside of what the district approved. And it goes back to because I knew what was best for my students, and they weren't getting it there was no help coming from the district. There's no resources. There's literally no resources in a Title I school, and if you have any, they're going towards very specific things like reading and math. So, as an elective, there was nothing. So level 0, yes, I've been there, and I was the annoying teacher.
And Title One is the best, right? That's why it's
Oh,
called
of
Title
course.
One.
I say people. There are two types of teachers out there. They're the ones who like to go to their neighborhood school and teach, and then there are those who. It is a thankless job to teach in Title One. It is hard. It is difficult. And everything that they teach you in alternative certification programs never prepares you for the needs that these children need, that they bring to the classroom. I mean, survival. Most of them are struggling to survive. And that's another thing that I think is missing in the ID piece. When we're designing courses, you need to consider those students who don't have anything. Yeah, they have a computer sitting in front of them, but they spent all their money trying to get out of poverty, get this computer, and now they're eating ramen or mac and cheese. I mean, we had a food bank in our school that we all donated to, that the community would donate to. So that's another one of those pieces that doesn't get enough attention, especially
Right.
as I move through these ISDT programs. The at-risk students, the ESL or ELL, they're calling it now, students, all of these students online bring a special group of needs that is really hard to address. So.
And is there any classwork about addressing those issues in the the
Not
teacher
in the
certification
online
programs?
environment.
Not for the online environment specifically. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's only 20 years old. The slow response to changing needs demographically. Well, and I think you guys are trained to address their needs as learners, and then you get in the classroom and find out that they're also people. Have you tried not caring?
Just not an option.
Okay, they may need a course on that.
Yeah, although there were several of my coworkers
Enforced
who subscribed
apathy.
to that.
That's always delightful to find out in education. So yeah, that's level 0. Then we have level 1. Again, your faculty are going to have an LMS. They've got a support desk, right? So now they've got someplace for the students to actually call in, and the students can get their help done that way, email, chat, whatever it is. Maybe it's not 24/7, but it exists. Maybe it's part of IT. Maybe it's part of academic support staff. It doesn't matter. Then the faculty can step away from being the tech support for every issue. There's so many barriers to doing anything online if you don't have somebody to send your students to. And how many faculty or how many teachers are going to say, yes, I would love to be tech support for 30 ninth graders.
Well, let's be real. A lot of those teachers don't know a lot about tech themselves, so they can't
Right.
answer the questions.
Yeah, now it's they maybe have a vendor relationship, or they've gone to a really good conference presentation and they've seen a key piece of how to use something in their classroom, but they don't have any of the supporting experience to assist the students with the setup, with the issues, with the troubleshooting. Yeah. So limited ID service is available. Now we've got an ID for an entire college and university. So that other example I had where you had 4 satellite colleges and 2 IDs, they're halfway there. So they would need 2 more IDs to be at level 1. But the growth is still not strategic, right? Colleges are going online when they feel like it. Or they tell you, they call the IDs in August and say, hey, we can put this online for the fall, right? You just click copy and paste. We got some publisher content, and
Oof.
we got some DVDs.
I've got some friends living through that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, the programs can decide to move online simultaneously, develop their own timelines for it, with or without content, with publisher content. Publisher content is something that I would recommend to a lot of people at level 1. It is the
Really? I
perfect.
say depend on the publisher.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Because all instructional materials are not created equal.
No, and something that I recommend in writing and in the my painting hobby is if you reach a block, do something wrong on purpose, so that you can just sit there and cringe in agony as you do it. No, no, I'm just kidding. But doing something wrong on purpose, or not necessarily doing it wrong on purpose, but doing something that you know is not optimized and seeing it through so that you fully understand why you need to do it the way that the experts recommended. And don't put people's lives on the line when you do these little experiments. But that's how I have to learn. I have to see the variables in play, and I have to feel what needs to be changed and edited.
So, strategic question.
Mhm.
How long do you think it takes for 1 hour of training, 1 hour of schoolwork, whatever? How long do you think that takes preparation wise? Because there's a number.
Mm.
And if we lived by that number, everything would be amazing. But we don't have the resources to live by that number. Very few
So
organizations do.
So I think of things in a cycle. And actually, in my graduate presentation, I used a picture of a rock tumbler, and I used the rock tumbler approach to instructional design, right, where you have to pull the rocks out and look at them every once in a while before you can put them back in. And so that's the semester deployment, right? I use multiple semester deployments to refine a particular product. So in the beginning, 3 or 4 hours, over semesters, over time, keep working on them, keep adjusting them. The time goes down for some things, goes up for others because you have to pull the pieces out. But I mean, over a 3 semester period, I say 5 hours per 1 hour.
No, if you're going through the entire cycle the way it was meant to be, starting with that one piece that we talk about that nobody ever goes through as the needs assessment and all
Right.
of
Yeah.
that. Honestly, for each 1 hour, you should budget at least 8 hours working time for the first build. I mean, I understand what you're saying. After you have it built out, the recycling and the
Hmm.
pulling and reviewing, which I hope everybody's doing. Not just you're not just putting the same course out there every semester, right? Without going over your content. Just saying. But no, it's actually statistically 8 hours for a true build. 8 hours per 1 hour that
Okay.
needs. Yeah,
Yeah, we don't do that.
yeah, we'd never do that.
Um, and yeah, and then there's the idea of like creating prototypes at the beginning and how time consuming that is. And I use the we'll do it live method of adapting on the fly as needed, but trying to fulfill your original plan for your semester to the degree that you can. And that way you won't have too many variables to look at when you come back to it.
So going back
Um,
to the whole point of I think level one, which I never thought about from that perspective, but you're 100% right. If you can get a support desk in there, the amount of work that you're taking off of the professor or teacher is huge. And I think back to when we brought Canvas online in my district, we were all that the students had. There was no
yeah.
place for the students to go. So what a great idea if you could bring that down to the K through 12 level, not just keep it up in secondary and higher ed.
Yeah. And then the unquantifiable fear element, right? How many teachers just are not going to do a dang thing if you present them with a tool? And when I was in
It
IT, I
happened.
saw this happen over and
Yeah.
over and over again. We would have these enterprise level deployments of these amazing tools with absolutely no follow through with examples or trainings beyond like, here's what we got from the publisher. So here's the training that you get, or the software provider or whatever.
Well, the other
No
crucial piece of
guidance. And
that was the buy-in. You didn't show them why they needed it to begin with. You
yeah,
didn't show them
because
what they
they
could do.
in IT they didn't feel like it was their job. We have assessed a need. We have provided a tool.
But did they
You're
ask the
welcome.
teachers?
The who, and then The last piece about level one is the faculty that are inexperienced online. They've gone to one conference, they watched a seminar, they saw a TED talk. Now they're building online classes with little to no oversight, no cooperation departmentally, God forbid, across departments, unless they just happen to have little buddies and little groups. And this is just like the caveat for level zero. There's always going to be faculty that are beyond the university, beyond the institution. And then in the dangers area is a lot of people can get to level one and say, we're doing it, right? We've got faculty buy-in, we've got people doing stuff online, we've got a support desk now, like this is it, we've made it. No, there's so many more things and so many more opportunities if they continue to strategically develop, or begin to strategically develop, which leads us to level two. So anything that level one, you've probably experienced level one too in a lot of different ways. Um,
Well, I would think that one of the other dangers that you run into with level one are those teachers who are now driving the bus, and some of them are pushing you in a direction that may not necessarily be the best direction that you need to go. Like, oh well, we've got this. Let's add this tool. Let's add this tool. Let's add this tool, and it becomes basically just a paella. I mean, that's the only thing. I'm
yeah,
hungry.
well, yeah, yeah.
Just throw everything
And
in there.
if you if you all of your knowledge comes from one specific seminar or training or whatever, right? You are in danger of having everything formed a certain way that it just doesn't adapt and work. And so, for instance, my dad bought a car, and at one point it only turned left. And so, imagine
Is that dirt
you're the
track racing?
teacher. Nah, it was some kind of big Lincoln. So it took him a long time to get anywhere, right? Because he had to make four left turns, or three left turns. I'm terrible with spatial issues. The point being, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are if you're trained to drive in a way that you have to make ridiculous things to get to your destination. I've seen plenty of faculty do this with tools that they've implemented, and they say things like, you've got to download this and print this out and then upload it
Yeah.
here, and you've got to take this screenshot with your. No, no, you don't. Um, so level two, right? We're getting into places now where I think faculty are like, I want to be in level two. Um, Faculty have access to an LMS, the support desk there. It's there for the students and the faculty, beyond just connection issues and basic troubleshooting. And you've got trainings, right? They've got some sort of contract with an outside vendor to provide trainings, or as they adopt tools, they pay for that on-site trainings that vendors provide, and software providers hopefully have. And then you get into the idea of ID teams, right? You don't just have the one ID strapped to the mast in the hurricane that is the onslaught of online education. You've got teams of them. I'll stop my sailing analogies there because that's all I've got.
You're
Um,
all over the place.
yeah, my analogies are the worst. They're as bad as someone that's bad at analogies. Um, so the ID teams are out there. Maybe you've got an ID team for each major college and program now, instead of just one for each university or satellite school. So you've got planned growth. You've got staff hired in conjuncture with large scale development programs and movements online, um, before the classes are being developed. Maybe that might be more like level three. Um, so the faculty that were the masters at level one are now the experienced elite online instructors in level two. Hopefully some of them have committee level contacts. They're in their faculty senate. They have the ability to inform and guide the others in their departments and programs, and help people share their content, share their videos, um, come back from conferences with ideas that they're able to actually share with somebody that can help them operationalize them. Cross departmental collaboration even exists. Um, which is great. And you find out like, oh, there's an English lit class that's working together with a CJ class to develop a writing program around cold cases so that these things can get brought back into the light. Or I just made that up. I hope that actually exists. Um,
It would actually be a good program.
yeah, I know. I need to call somebody. um, um, actually, you can do it yourself. Yeah. Um, yeah, shared content. People are building programs and projects in one college that can then be implemented as micro lectures or mini lectures in other programs. Um, Business and communication working together. If there isn't already a business communication degree, there's so many different cross pollinations that can happen naturally with faculty that have a structure to support them, and they're not penalized for experimenting. I guess is a key part of level two as well.
I could see that. But so one of the issues I see with this level is that there has to be a strategic decision as an organizational whole that that's what we want, because there are a lot of and this is across all three, organization. I'm talking higher ed, K through 12, and with organizational training.
Hmm.
There are people who want to remain in those silos. This is
Right,
mine.
right, right.
This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. And they don't have a
Yeah,
bigger picture vision of what their organization can become.
sure. Yeah, and how
So,
many of those people there are and how strategically they're placed will limit a level two from ever going anywhere beyond, and can potentially drag certain programs back down to level one.
but
Um,
ideally, wouldn't that be somewhere that you wanted your organization to go?
right, 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 right. And even a few key stakeholders at the university that are on board can help push a university up to level two, even though certain pockets may stay at level one. Um, any supporting structure for faculty is better than none. And while you were saying like, yeah, they have to have a lot of buy-in. Yes and no, as long as they don't have a punishment structure
Mm-hmm.
put in place for like, oh yeah, yeah, you tried this online and it didn't work, so therefore online doesn't work, right? And it doesn't have to
Right.
be from an authority figure. It can be from colleagues, right? Somebody can be the first person to teach math online and they didn't get it, and they, like we said before, they went to one conference and learned how to use one tool for something, and they didn't know how to implement it and they didn't know how to adapt it to things that happened to them during the semester. And now everybody, well, yeah, obviously then math can't be taught online.
But that goes
um
back to your structure with your IDs. That's what your ID
mhm.
is there for. So if
Yeah.
you're not using that resource, I mean, part of building up through the levels is also recognizing and utilizing all of your resources to the best of their advantage. And I think that a lot of again, across the board, I think there are a lot of wasted resources, whether it's because of lack of communication or just the managerial, what's the word I'm looking for? Lorddom. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, fiefdom.
there's
Feudalism. Yeah.
bingo. Yes, bingo.
Yeah.
So if
Well,
you're
and
not,
here's another thing that happens though. When you move from level one to level two, you've got people that were those key people at level one that aren't as optimized as they think they are at level two. So they now become a blockage, and they're at the plateau while the rest of everybody moves forward into the advancement that is level two. And you've also got um no, I
it's
lost it.
gone.
It happened. It's gone. But yeah, before we get too far into the dangers of level two, um, other institutions siphoning off your experts. Right now, you've got faculty with 4 years teaching online, 5 years teaching online. That's 10 semesters, not including summer. That's a massive trove of experience that can be siphoned off by another institution that is only at level one, right? And now they're looking, it's like, oh man, this guy's taught this class 7 times online. We're trying to build that class. That faculty's gone. Same thing with
Maybe
the
you should take care of
IDs.
your faculty.
That's
What's
another
that
show.
face for?
That's another show. Take care of them. I mean, I don't know what you mean.
I know. But I'm just,
Hmm.
and to me, again, the most important part as you're moving up this framework, the person who is best served by this, it's not just a win-win for the university, a win-win for the faculty. The students are getting a richer online experience, and how can you not want to go? How can you not want to do that?
Seriously. And now I remembered what I was going to say. So as you go from one to two, and you've got those people that didn't benefit from the strategic growth, right? You've got the IDs and the faculty that are starting along the same time. So they built a program together. They've got an ongoing relationship. But now you've got new faculty coming in and old entrenched faculty. Strategic growth almost never includes retroactive relationship building with these established people. You've got to bring them up too into the same relationship that the new faculty get to build. And it has to be a strategic endeavor to get to level two with those faculty.
And
That's
it
what I was
is
trying to say.
possible. It is possible because as I came onto the university, I was handed a couple of people that they said would never do online. They're never
Yeah, yeah,
going to do
yeah.
it. And I am so proud of them and how much growth they have exhibited. And there is one who shall remain nameless, but he is makes my
I know
heart happy.
exactly who you
He
mean.
makes
Yeah.
my heart so happy because the other day I was on the phone with him and he says, you know, I really think I like this online stuff now. And I was like, yes, yes. So I
Oh,
made a
really?
believer out of that one, which
That's cool.
everybody bet against me.
And is he going to teach online
Are you
post
kidding
pandemic?
me? Are you kidding? He's teaching all his classes online now. He's not
Oh,
going
he
back
is.
into the
Okay.
classroom. No.
He's not going back. Okay, cool, cool. I wasn't sure if he was not going back or just retiring or what. So
Oh
now
no, he's
moving
not going
online,
to
that's
retire.
great. That's
Especially
wild.
now. Now that
Yeah,
he can
no,
do it from home, he's like, no, I got a couple more years in me. Like, yes, that's amazing.
that's awesome. Um,
So
oh yeah, yeah.
what does
And the
utopia look like?
well, the final danger of level two is that it's new growth, right? And anybody that's ever tried to half-ass tend a garden knows that new growth is extremely sensitive. So level two is in danger of being derailed by administrative changes or just a lack of understanding or a backing of online programs, right? Like we talked about, the one faculty member building a course and then saying he had a bad experience. Well, now if there's a couple of them and they were the key people in a pilot program, well, now the 2-year contract is over, it's not renewed, right? The online endeavor is doomed to failure. And that flavor will last at the institution for a stupid amount of time. So yeah, that's the danger of level two. It can quickly revert back to level ones without any sign or ability to move back up the chain until you have another administrative change.
I've seen that with several friends have gone through that, and that's unfortunate. Me personally, I've never had an experience of working at a true level two. I think we're pretty close to that. I really do.
Yeah,
But it, yeah, there's that constant threat of, well, who's gonna take over and what's gonna change. I've never worked. Well, I say that. My first school was pretty close to this as well because everybody was on the same page and worked as a community rather than as a organizational structure. So
and what do you
we,
mean by everybody?
I mean, teachers worked with administration.
Oh,
Administration
you do
had the
mean everybody.
buy-in of teachers. They cared about what we thought we needed. We weren't always right, but sometimes, if we weren't right, they would explain to us their point of view. So it was, and that's
Mhm.
rare. I mean, that's really hard to find in
Yeah,
any
that's like the community
organization.
level too.
Yeah, but
Um,
it was a phenomenal school, and we did some amazing things there, and it was kind of like lightning in a bottle. So it really comes back to this is where the pressure comes onto the administration. What kind of organization do you want to run? And some of
Yeah.
them don't want that kind of innovation. Some of them don't want that much autonomy. They want to have more control over what's going on. And I get that too. I get that too. Because with this comes experimentation, and with experimentation comes money. And
Mm.
experiments don't always work.
Yeah.
So I understand from a fiscal point of view why this would be a little bit terrifying for some administrations.
Sure, sure. I don't know. I mean, I'm terrified daily. I'm middle management. I heard somebody online say something hilarious about middle managers. They were like, it's only middle managers that want people to go back into the office. And I'm like,
No.
no, those people
No.
are bad at their job.
Yeah.
If you have to have your people in front of you to know that they're working, you don't know how to train them and you don't know how to supervise them. That's
Agreed.
a whole nother show. We'll
That
leave that
is.
later. Okay, so now we're at level three. We're at the impossible is already taking place. The Dyson sphere analogy that I used, which is a sci-fi theory or an idea that for civilization to be advanced enough to handle interstellar travel and to be a galactic civilization, you have to be able to basically siphon off the entire energy of a star, and that's what the Dyson sphere is. It's a device built around a star to harness all of its energy. So that's where we are now at the level three of instructional design, right? Everything is harnessed together. It's coalesced into these amazing systems that you know, um, feedback from a design rubric. Um, Faculty have multiple discipline specific publisher LMSs to handle their little key pieces so that they're not having to build Spanish flashcards and build a system to maintain attendance. And all these things are handled programmatically. They're maintained for the faculty. They're sent over to academic support staff that can handle both the questions from the students, the questions from the faculty, the um, frustrations from the publishers, getting that stuff set up, getting those things moved over. Videos are made. Um, Training is even required to teach online or is a pathway to teach online. That some sort of training goal is happening. Strategic growth is expected, right? You have a conversation almost every time another college or program moves online where people expect to meet the new ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the university level and the ID team and everywhere between. Um, ID teams are managed by IDs, people that had ID experience that grew up in hopefully the level two that spawned this level three, and if not something comparable to where they can deal with the institutional changes as they happen. Um, IDs are asked to inform decisions across the hierarchy, right? When publishers are implemented or um, contracts are being decided upon for signing or for canceling, IDs are actually brought into the discussion. Um, Faculty begin to reach out to the IDs naturally when they have IDs, when they have ideas about future courses to see what's possible in the LMS environment instead of the reverse, where content is decided upon and structured based upon existing faculty knowledge and then adapted by the ID. Um, Faculty and ID are co-presenting, they're co-authoring papers, they're working on projects together that are in the faculty's interest, maybe not necessarily connected to a class. Organizations across campus are managed by IDs and helped with ID input so that even the non-academic structure of the online environment is informed and guided to help people not have daily nightmares. The guide that I mentioned previously, right? You've got a rubric or a guide for online development of these courses. It's adhered to at administration and faculty level and combined with the online training segment and certification series that you've got. Um, and there's still dangers at level three, right?
There's always the danger of backsliding. I think
Yeah.
that before you get into the dangers, I think that we have had, we have so many elements of this level, and I think where we're lacking in this level is probably going to fall underneath your dangers. um, but I fully believe that nobody should be designing a course without some sort of rubric, without some sort of evaluation of the course.
Right.
And that is the key. That is the cornerstone of the whole program. Is you have to have something that basically is some measure of the effectiveness of the course. Now, is it going to be the same for every course? I don't know. So you have to have more of a holistic rubric than an analytic rubric, because if it was analytic, it's going to look different across every discipline. So maybe it's a combination of both. But I know that we use a holistic rubric, and I personally think that our rubric is better than the Quality Matters rubric, because I think it takes into account a lot of the things that other Quality Matters doesn't. So whenever I see a research report on QM, I just like twitch a little bit. I'm like, no, because
And you've
it's
gone
missing
through it,
so
right?
much. Do what?
You're QM
I have,
certifiable.
yeah. So and I feel that it's missing some of the pieces that it's missing, just in the structure of the course and in the effectiveness of the course. I don't think that their measures are truly good measures of those things.
Yeah, maybe we need to do a whole podcast about the organic growth of our rubric and how it ended up where it is, because it was a 3 year development process and redesign process for that.
I do think that our university does not tout that rubric enough. I think that
And it's
that
probably
rubric could
because I helped
easily,
develop it.
well, that, I mean, honestly, it could be an industry standard. It really could. I think it's that good.
Yeah, I mean, I consider it to be. No
Of
one's
course you
asked me.
do.
Well, and I think it's way better for what we needed than QM. QM is not designed for a programmatic assessment of 10 classes moving online at once, with faculty working independently of themselves that are super busy and not on sabbatical and are teaching a full load while developing a class. So we took an older version of QM that was available, that they had on their website, and moved forward from there and adapted it to make it our own. Um, oh
And
yeah,
it
yeah. So
needs to be
the
something that constantly has to be revisited anyway. Again, I mean, as
yeah,
things change, as
we're actually
research
we're
evolves.
due to do it again. Yeah, it's always
So,
fun. It's a
dangers
lot
of
of work.
utopia. Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah, so the same danger as before, right? Other institutions, they're coming after your faculty, they're coming after your support staff, they're coming after your IDs, or your faculty and your IDs are now reaching out for opportunities, um, that they now qualify for based on their experience, helping turn a level 1 to a 2 to a 3, or somewhere along those lines. Or they're the 2 to 3 year quote unquote job hoppers who are just trying to maximize their career. Um,
What are you saying, Thomas?
Not everybody works somewhere for 20 years. No,
I
and
get bored. I get
as a
bored.
hiring manager, it means nothing to me. If you work somewhere for 10 years, if you work 5 places in 10 years, unless every time you leave a job, you're like, I can't tell you. Like we had a candidate one time that put this the weirdest answers on why he left each job, and we're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
You're an a-hole. Um, and then the ultimate danger of level 3 is losing lots of your established content when there's shifts in technology and things are end of life, like Flash. Publishers, tool providers, contracts get ended. So Flash dying is a perfect example.
But is it because we knew Flash was dying? We knew Flash was dying long before they pulled the plug on it.
Did
So we
we?
should have moved past that a long
I
time
had a faculty
ago.
member email me for one of the classes that I had you fix. I had a faculty member email me 2 months ago and tell me to fix it because he didn't know what Flash was, and it had been dead already for 5 months. Um, Luckily, you had already fixed it, so I just needed to load those videos in. Um, But yeah, no, he didn't care. He didn't know it was in Flash because it wasn't his decision to put it in Flash, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a previous ID team that just did things for people, and they put it in for Flash and they put it in for HTML for some people, but he never had the HTML version. And so, yeah, you're right. That we had a lot of warning, so we were able to strategically assault that problem, right? And we told the faculty a year out, re-record your lectures. We're not going to pay money to have these 8-year-old Flash videos turned into new turds. We want you to re-record your stuff. And like 90% of them, 95% of them just made new lectures or already had made new lectures, and they weren't even using the Flash content anymore. It was simply legacy content that was copied over and copied over like a 40-foot tall dung beetle. Um, and then yeah, the other big danger is when you lose publisher content through canceling contracts or things that the faculty member wanted to keep using, but is just out of their control. And now all of a sudden they've got to pivot on the spot in the summer and make 15 weeks of content in
It should
the
never
last
be like
5
that,
weeks.
though. If you are reviewing your contracts, if you are reviewing your courses, going over them, if you are
Mm,
paying attention to the technology, if your
yeah,
team as a team is proactive instead of reactive, then this doesn't even, it's a no-brainer. You've already
yeah, and
addressed these
that's a key difference
problems.
between levels 1, 2, and 3 is that structure of support on the decision making side.
Hmm.
That's It's easy to forget that it's there too because when it's working, it's seamless and it presents no barriers to success and no punishment for experimentation. It's easy to forget about it and to forget about the battles that some of those people went through to get that structure set up.
Hmm.
Not that I know what any of that means.
Yeah, and ultimately, I wish that all organizations had the foresight to want to build these I mean, it truly is at this level a learning community. People
Mm.
throw that term around all the time. Oh, we want to build a learning community. No, you want to dictate what everybody will use. If you have the buy-in from the ground up and the support from the top down, you can have this utopia. You really could. But if it doesn't go both ways, then it will just never exist.
Yeah, and it has to be solidified over a long enough time period to where it becomes the actual zeitgeist. It becomes the way that university sees itself moving forward. And it's like after you had 20 years of a support desk and all these things going together, supporting faculty, and like, it's not going away,
Right.
um, right? No one's like, you know what we really need? Less help.
But that too is a danger in itself, which we see on occasion in where we are. It's an ebb and flow. So
Mm.
sometimes we have a lot of work, and sometimes we don't have a lot of work. And I know that administration looks at those times when we don't have as much to do and goes, we could probably cut costs here, and you chop a couple positions. Here comes the beginning of the semester, and you're short
Mm.
staffed again. So it
Yeah,
does take a little bit of fortitude to see through those ebbs and flows too,
yeah,
and not have a reactive administration.
right. And to figure out ways to utilize the people,
Hmm.
right? How do you shift from, I don't have 25 courses to build right now. Well, you've still got all these faculty that need additional training, they need help, they need opportunities shown to them. They need to know what these tools are that you are going to have to support next semester. They need to have as much guidance as they can. Like, publisher content, maybe they're only using the e-text, right? And there's 25 layers of stuff inside of that publisher content that they could be getting into. Or maybe they just said, to the students, go into the publisher content and do whatever you want. And that's their version of adopting the digital content, right? I mean, we've all
Right.
seen that plenty of times. Um, and so, yeah, getting somebody to sit down with you with their syllabus and say, what could I actually do differently? And what could I include? And how do I focus my energies on what needs to be done and not just adopt 4 new tools into my class.
And that goes back to just using all of your resources wisely, knowing that you have a time coming where you're going to have downtime. Well, I know that this idea is good at this. I know that this idea is good at this. Maybe we could pull them in. And then it's more fulfilling for the ID, right? Because we're not
Hmm.
doing the same thing over and over again, and we get to play with some of our passion projects as well.
I didn't
It's
even think
just a
about that,
matter
but
of
yeah, that's a key
knowing
piece
what they
of level
know.
3
Yeah.
is you've got these not entrenched, but these expert IDs and different things, right? Maybe you got somebody that's done 4 different gamification efforts and they've presented on it and co-authored, and maybe you've got somebody else that's helped write disaster recovery plans for the university. And there's just anytime you have staff that are also fed into the university, process mapping or any kind of institutional endeavors, the design thinking element is extremely valuable in both ways, right? The IDs feed the design thinking up into the administration and the university,
We need
and they
growth
get
too.
better ideas.
Yeah. We don't want to get stagnant either. Or at least
Hmm.
some of us don't.
Yeah, and that's actually, yeah, that could be a whole show where I talk about my management ideas and style of how do you guide 8 different people in 8 different ways, right? There's no carbon copy. There's no easy way to do it. It's
Mm-mm.
extremely tiring and frustrating,
What?
but I fully recommend it. There's no better way to do it in my mind than building a separate management
Yep.
structure for every person. But then again, I think I'm at my limit. If they add another person on my team, I'm probably just going to be like, you know what? You get this person's management style. You don't get your own.
Oh, you're not special enough. What were we just talking about, Thomas? And those ones coming in need the most support. Don't fail
Fine.
me now.
No, no, I've had to learn and grow and adapt with every new person. I
I honestly think that this needs to be a presentation. I think this needs to be a presentation that that people that need administration needs to ponder, because they are ultimately the ones who are going to make these decisions. They're the ones who are looking for, I don't know how to build an online department. I don't know how to make a successful ID program. I think
mhm,
that this is a wonderful example of how to build it.
right.
This is a solution. Hey, we made a solution! Yay! But
Yeah,
this needs to be out there, and people need to see it, because
right.
especially with coming post pandemic, everybody and their mother is jumping on online education now,
Yeah.
and
And it's easy to see them as concentric circles, right? With no knowledge of how level
yes,
1 would turn into a level 2, would turn into a level 3. And then in the presentation, we can actually show them the spiral, right? How do you grow these things naturally? How do you build it all up to where you have a tornado of learning?
tornado of learning.
Hell is wrong with me?
No more coffee.
I'm at my limit. Yeah, I'm not allowed to have any more after this until I eat and drink water. Oh, and we're almost at like our hour too. We did it.
Yeah.
I think we were way more focused this time too.
It has to do with the early morning.
I think so. This might
Yep.
be it. This
I'm
might be
more
when I need
focused
to
in the
actually
morning.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, ditto.